From Channel 5, this is Briefing Session. Briefing Session, an in-depth account of issues and events in the news. Today's guest, former Mayor James F. Conway.
Good afternoon. Politics and elections are sometimes boring stuff, but the race for mayor in St. Louis was anything but boring. You had an incumbent mayor of 4 years facing a strong challenge within his own party, and one of the key issues was Homer G. Phillips Hospital. Former mayors of St. Louis had talked about closing it for years and didn't, because they were afraid perhaps that such a move would be political suicide. The man with us today closed down part of it, and he was beaten, as you know. But that's only part of the story. Today we're going to get the whole story from James F. Conway, the former mayor of St. Louis. Mr. Conway, welcome to our briefing session.
John, it's a pleasure to be here.
The last time we met here on this program, it was before the Democratic primary. You were about to go against Vince Schoemehl. None of us obviously could foretell what was about to happen to you, that you were, or soon would be, in deep trouble with the voters. And you had changed your campaign somewhat earlier, changed your strategy to start responding to Alderman Schoemehl instead of ignoring his campaign while he'd been campaigning against you for months and months. Was there, Jim, at some point you sensed that you should have done something differently, or that you sensed you were indeed in trouble with the voters?
Well, John, we knew that the Phillips question was going to be a difficult one for us when we made the decision because of the emotions that were connected with it, and my opponent very carefully orchestrated that issue and kept it at a high boil right up until the election. And I think the election results borne out the fact that most persons in North St. Louis voted against Mayor Conway because of the efforts to consolidate acute patient care in the city. The other problem that we were faced with is that during the course of the election, my opponent was making a lot of promises that could not be delivered in terms of performance, and yet we had a difficult time getting the media even to raise some discerning questions about these promises. And so we found that we had to then do a very strong effort to discount some of the statements that were being made.
But did you feel some point, though, that you were losing it?
Well, we knew that we had a problem, John, but we never felt that it was totally out of grasp. And
even on election day, you felt?
On election day, we felt that we had a reasonable chance for renomination.
Let's go back to Jim Conway 4 years ago when you came into office after beating A.J. Cervantes, and then the Republican candidate, and you won big in 1977. You were, in effect, an outsider who would soon become an insider and then a victim yourself. During the past 4 years, what changed? What changed about the voters' perception or the public's response to your image, or to what you were trying to do? You won very big in 77. You lost very big in 81.
Well, John, I think you have to appreciate that when you lose in one segment of the community by an 8-to-1 margin, it takes a lot of votes elsewhere to make up for it. I think very clearly that was the overriding issue, and having that kind of base from which my opponent was building, he was able to attract those others who are always looking for the winner and move with that person who appears to have a good shot because of a special set of circumstances.
But what about the business of being an outsider and then becoming an insider? Every incumbent before past history had shown that incumbents had a good time, were reasonably sure of being reelected. Recently, however, that all changed the last 10 years.
Sure.
How do you feel about it? You're on both sides now. You were outsider, insider. Now you're an outsider.
Well, I'm going back to the private sector. John, actually, I had been in public service for the last 15 years, and wasn't a case that I was not in public service.
Well, I guess what I mean, Jim, is that you weren't part of the city hall politics.
That's
State
right.
legislator for what, 11
Correct.
years?
And that's true. Generally speaking, I was construed to be not one of the system that where you waited in line and you were anointed and you went on to the next position. And traditionally, I had overcome opponents who had that kind of designation. And so when I ran 4 years ago for mayor, I was not the favorite of the old liners, and subsequently was able to overcome their candidate. However, what I looked at as being the mayor of the city of St. Louis, we had a great number of problems, and when I ran, I told people that we were going to bring sound management techniques to city government. They accepted that principle, and we delivered on it. Now, in the course of making those decisions, some of them began to be very unpopular with certain elements of the community. They wanted sound government as long as it didn't affect the services or the particular item that was close to their heart.
The press accounts that when you went into office quote you as talking about streamlining City Hall tradition and cleaning up inefficient government. Sure. and waste and lazy civil servants, patronage politics and all that, and then rejuvenating the city's industrial and economic Sure. base. I think most people realize that politicians often make promises they can't Sure. keep when the number one job during the campaign is to get elected. Sure. Number one job to get elected. What did you find out, Jim Conway, about what promises you had made versus those you couldn't keep?
John, we made approximately 75 promises when I ran 4 years ago. In fact, I was amazed at how many I had made. The important thing is that we completed 85% of those 75. And the interesting thing is one of those that we had indicated, as you stated earlier, is that we were going to move to bring sound management techniques to city government. We reduced the actual regular table of organization within city service by over 1,000 people without reducing the level of services. As a matter of fact, we actually increased the level of services to the citizens of St. Louis in the last 4 years.
What was your biggest frustration, Jim?
Well, actually, we had so many accomplishments that it's hard to say that we had the biggest frustration. We had, obviously, certain frustrations. In my first year, we had some difficulty coming right into the office of getting what I felt was the right kind of community development block grant bill, and that was a little bit frustrating. Mr. Persich certainly didn't make life easy for not only the mayor, but for practically everybody in the city of St. Louis, and sometimes that could be frustrating because it was hard to understand oftentimes his reasoning. But generally speaking, there's been no one major overwhelming frustration. I was, well, I might add, I was frustrated a little bit on the Admiral. I thought we had it saved, and some actions by the President of the Board of Aldermen kind of sunk the Admiral for the city.
Our guest is James F. Conway, the former mayor of St. Louis. This is Briefing Session, and we'll continue with our discussion in just a moment. James Conway with us today on Briefing Session. Mr. Conway, I want to be very personal with you for a moment because you've lived in a life that's literally a fishbowl as mayor for the past 4 years of St. Louis, and your previous experience with the state legislature for more than a decade. This is not all really uncomfortable for you. You're very much a professional at this. You weren't particularly rich and famous when you became mayor of St. Louis, and yet you were in a decidedly different league. Suddenly, among the power structure of the city of St. Louis, certainly the Midwest, state of Missouri, and in many respects that of the country, that of the United States. Was there an adjustment, a big adjustment to make in making that transition from state legislator to mayor of a big city? Not for me, John. I don't think I'm any different than I was when I was a state senator. I remember the General Assembly, a little older, a little grayer, maybe a little heavier, but I don't think I've really changed a whole lot. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I've changed at all. Did you? Then you didn't recognize any change taking place in your style, the way you No, I only know one way, John. And as a matter of fact, one of my former associates in the Senate was telling people the other day, and I got the story third hand, that he says Conway has never changed. He's always told it how it is, and he's always done what his conscience has told him. And
And it hasn't always been a popular road for Jim, but he always did it the way he felt it should be done.
What was, all of us who live a public kind of life are asked this question. I know you've been asked this question before, but what's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you as mayor?
John, we had
besides being defeated in the election.
Well, that only hurts for a little while, but I had, about 3 years ago, we had a media event in my office, and we had a new chap with the Community Development Agency that was handling the homestead program, and this is a program where you allow a person to have a house that's turned back over to the city by HUD, but we have these lotteries and draw people out. And lo and behold, he hands me the keys to a gentleman who is probably one of the largest drug ring leaders in the city of St. Louis. But he was new to the city and didn't know who he was. And here I am in front of all the cameras presenting the keys to a house to one of the leaders of one of the largest drug rings in the community.
There was some
Needless to say, I carried it off without even really being detected by the media.
Did nothing ever came of that?
Yes, one of the reporters caught it and was smart enough to pull me aside afterwards and get an exclusive on it.
See, did you know that? Yeah. There was some criticism of your manner in those early days of the administration. Some from the press accounts talked about Jim Conway's arrogance. Others talked about Jim Conway's self-confidence and his control and self-assurance. I wonder how you reacted to that kind of appraisal of your administration and your method and your style.
Well, John, it's hard to say how people interpret or perceive your emotions. My position has always been that you compromise where you need to compromise, and you never compromise on principle. And of course, we always had persons who felt that you should compromise on everything just because somebody is objecting. And I've always taken a position, if we've got the votes and the proposition is right, you don't need to compromise, okay? If you don't have the votes and you need to compromise, you compromise, but you never compromise on principle. And some people, I guess, felt that we were going to negotiate with them on every vote, and we didn't. And we were successful in spite of it.
You came into the job as mayor of St. Louis with considerable experience already along the campaign trail and public office. We've talked about that in the state legislature of Missouri. But being mayor is certainly different from all of that. Did you learn something that really surprised you? Was there some big lesson that you take away from the job at City Hall as the top executive officer of the city?
Well, John, certainly there's no greater challenge anywhere in the United States in terms of a job that's going to have one major problem after another. In fact, you can almost count on having all the major problems in the city, because usually if they're too big for a department head, they're going to send it up to the mayor. There's probably no other job where you're faced with tackling one tough problem day in and day out like a mayor's office. And so you not only have to be mentally prepared for that, you almost have to be physically prepared for that. And you can see why an office of this nature, for a person not both mentally and physically prepared for, can really overcome the person. I really enjoyed the job, John. I just had a tremendous amount of self-satisfaction and enjoyment on the job, and just the enjoyment of all the accomplishments that we're able to achieve in the last 4 years. And I brought from it certainly a number of improved skills in making sure things get done and perceiving fairly accurately exactly what we were faced with in getting a resolution to a problem.
You were, I know, a high school wrestler. You really were prepared.
I wasn't a wrestler.
Is that
several
right?
of my sons were. I was a boxer.
A boxer.
And somebody hung a tag on me as a wrestler. Maybe that's because I wrestled on issues. But
but as a boxer, you really came into somewhat in a mental frame of mind that would put you in an assertive position. Some might come in defensively as a mayor, overwhelmed by a political machine. Here you knew you had to put your best foot forward and drive with a leading punch to the left or to the right. Did you find yourself asserting yourself
Well, I
physically as
think-
well as mentally?
Well, not so much in the physical sense of threatening, although there have been a few times that my life has been threatened during the course of my being mayor. But you know, it takes so much energy, and it's a very emotional job too. You have a lot of ups and downs during the course of the activity, and you really do have to be physically in good shape.
What did you do about leaving the office at sundown? Could you put those problems aside, or
Yes,
did you carry them with you?
No, I generally did not carry problems with me.
Well, how did you devise that mechanism that allowed you to separate the?
Well, I guess
that
it's
pressure?
something that I've learned over the years, John, that I can just kind of turn it off and turn it on.
You're watching Briefing Session today with James Conway, and we'll continue in a moment. The building boom in St. Louis is really something to see, as all of you have seen in downtown St. Louis. Office buildings everywhere. You've been very close to all of that, Mr. Conway. How does that make you feel when you see construction start, or you see a new high-rise, or as you drive by it every day and you look at the changing horizon?
Well, John, it's probably the most exciting portion of the job. I've spent probably 35 to 40% of all of my time in affecting reinvestment in the city of St. Louis, whether it's commercial, industrial, or residential. And if you can appreciate, in '76 there were only 14 new housing starts in the city. And we have built already over 3,000 units of housing and have 2,000 more in the pipeline right now. And the amount of commercial activity here is just phenomenal compared to where we were 4 years ago. And so needless to say, it really excites me, and if I'm remembered for anything as I leave public office, it's the work we did at Lambert and the work we've done in residential and commercial development in the city of St. Louis.
Your battles with the Board of Aldermen became somewhat legendary during your administration. Over specifically how money was to be spent. I wonder now in retrospect, many have said that you succeeded in whittling away the power of the Board of Aldermen while building up your own influence. How do you look back now on those disputes with the board?
Well, Joe, when I came in, we had a major battle on a bill that was not developed in my administration, but because I inherited the position, I had to fight for it. And there was some great feeling about the community development block grant budget from years previous, and so we were paying a heavy price, and they wanted to change that dramatically, and they did. And of course, over the next few years, I had to change it back. I think it's important to have a separation of powers between the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And I think it's important that we all recognize what our role is within that framework. And the problem is sometimes those roles are confused, and it makes it much more difficult for us to carry out our respective tasks.
You think obviously the mayor should have a more influential position?
Well, I think it's important to have a strong mayor system. And I think the legislature should be a strong body, too, within its own role.
How about let's talk about your favorite pastime, Jim Conway. What is it now? How's your life going to change, and what are you going to do?
Well, John, one of the ways it's going to change, for the first time in nearly 15 years, I'm going to be able to do a lot of things that I like to do, but have had to sacrifice because I held public office. And one of those things is to complete the restoration of my house, which I really stopped about 15 years ago. And of course, I've given up the operations of my business, which I will return to now that I'm going out.
The plastics company.
Yes, I intend to lecture at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, something that I'm really looking forward to. And I'm going to be involved in other endeavors too. But one thing is I'll have a lot more control of my leisure time, and I'll have a lot more of it. And I'll be able to enjoy some hobbies that I enjoy very much.
Like what? What kind of?
Well, I once exhibited and raised fancy pigeons. I'm a renowned judge of several varieties. I enjoy photography, and I enjoy spectator sports as well.
What now, politically? It would seem, after all of your years of experience as mayor of St. Louis and the state legislature, it would seem a shame to let a man of your experience not run for some other public office, perhaps mayor again, the state, congressional, what?
John, I really have no desire to go to
Ever?
either Jefferson City or to Washington, and I have no specific plans. For the short time, at least, I have no intentions of running for public office.
I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, Jim. You're not ruling it out altogether.
No, I'm not ruling it out altogether, John, but I just really do not have any immediate plans for seeking public office.
What do you think Vince Schoemehl is going to run into that he's not expecting as the new mayor of St. Louis?
Well, I'm certain that it's going to take on a much larger size as he walks into the office, and I'm certain, too, that he's going to run into a lot of problems that he didn't begin to believe existed. And that's the hard realization of being the mayor of the city of St. Louis. And he's going to have to make hard decisions, especially because revenues are extremely tight, and it's not going to be too easy having to cut various expenditures and retain a certain level of services.
Would you take a job in his administration if he asked you?
Not really.
Okay. Our time is up for now. It's been a fast 30 minutes with the former mayor. Just, I guess the last 4 years must have seemed to you very fast. James F. Conway, the former mayor of St. Louis, now private citizen. Before we go, any advice for any would-be politicians?
All I can say, John, I enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Conway. You've been very helpful to all of us in the media over the years, coming over here, allowing us to invade your privacy with questions, and we appreciate very much also you taking the time to be with us today.
John, the media has been very kind to me in St. Louis.
Thank you for being with us today. I'm John Wilson, and good afternoon.